Well, good morning. How are we doing this morning? Great? Oh, good. My goodness, I wish great is a good way to be this morning. So, I got thinking here. I got thinking about this whole Christianity thing and being a Christian. And you know what I wish? I wish this stuff were easy. Don't you? Wouldn't it be great if this stuff were easy? Like you decided to come to church one day and you came into church and you accepted God and He was your Savior, and then you went out and things just happened everywhere, right? Like people were getting healed and tongues of fire were dancing around everywhere, and every time you prayed something happened. Don't you wish it were easy like that? It was so exciting that no matter where you turned, you saw the power of God, so you would never lose faith. You'd never lose faith, right? If you got to walk around witnessing miracles day after day after day, it'd be easier, wouldn't it? Be easier for all of us. When those tough times came, it would be easier. I mean, it's kind of like Jesus had it. I mean, think about Jesus' life. He had it pretty simple, right? I mean, he got to see things. He got to heal people. He got to see miraculous things over and over and over again. So he must have really had it easy. I mean, faith must have come so easy to Jesus. But did it? For the most part, it did. It really did. But if you look through the story of the crucifixion, and you get right to the end, after a lot of time has passed, and he's been up there for a while, you get to that part, and he yells out something, doesn't he? He yells out something to his Father. This Father that he knows is there. I mean, he's watched all the miracles, right? But he says, Father, why have you forsaken me? I know the skies are dark in the middle of the day. I know the earth is beginning to tremble. I know I've done all of this so far. I've witnessed your miracles. I know your power. But just for a moment, even Jesus wonders, did you forget about me? So, I mean, it's got to be hard for us when Jesus even wondered that, right? It's got to be difficult for us. And, you have those times where you're praying to God for something, you just don't know if he hears you or not. There's actually something I've been praying for, and it just occurred to me this morning that it's almost 3 years. I've been praying for something for 3 years. Is he hearing me? I tried to get a hold of David earlier this week, and I called him, and I wasn't sure. He's usually very reachable to the staff Monday through Friday. He makes that a point to be able for us to reach him, in case we need to. And when I called him, it went right to voicemail. Didn't even ring or anything, just phone went right to voicemail. And when you call somebody, there's two things going on if the phone goes right to voicemail. Either A, they let their phone go dead, right? Didn't charge it and it's dead. Or B, they really want to be left alone. So when I got that voicemail, I thought, well, he really wants to be left alone. So I left him a message, and I kind of figured, well, I guess he'll hear it when he feels like hearing it. Isn't that what our prayers feel like sometimes? Like you leave a message, and I guess he'll hear it when he feels like hearing it, right? See, and people assume that for some reason I have it easier, that David has it easier, that people who preach have it easier, that we have this open line of communication, and it's just so much easier for us. That I don't have that problem you have. I don't have these prayers that aren't answered. But like I just told you, I have this prayer I've been praying for 3 years almost now. I don't know if it'll ever be answered. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have some awesome times with God. I sit down, and there are times when things are just moving. I can feel it. I know it's going. I know He's at work. I know He's working in my life. I start seeing things that unmistakably have to be God working. I have those times. They're exciting. They're fun. I love when I have those times. But more often, I have the other times. I'm kind of just sitting down in a valley where I think a lot of you guys sit too. We all kind of sit there sometimes, right? Where the daily devotion isn't fun. Like I've decided, that I was going to go through this year, and my goal is to read the Bible chronologically. I've never read it chronologically, so I wanted to do that. And, at first I was really excited, and it is exciting at the beginning of Genesis. I mean, life's being created, and it's all this new world, and then, I don't know if you know, but, if you keep going through Genesis, the excitement wears down just a bit. Okay, a lot. And there's like 55 chapters of Genesis. 55, like really? So I got to about 40, I'm like, is this going to end? And then the thing is what do I have to look forward to after Genesis? Ooh, I got things like Leviticus, and I've got Numbers. Woohoo! Now it's going to be fun, right? Those are not fun books to read. So I'm sitting there in the morning, and there's some mornings where I'm reading this, and I'm like, this doesn't apply to anything. This applies to nothing in my life. It doesn't even make sense to me half the time. Why am I sitting here? So the next morning, I try it again, and what is it? I'm sitting there. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I can't figure out, aren't these devotions supposed to be fun and exciting, and I'll write prayers and have them answered and watch things happen? Isn't that what I'm supposed to be experiencing? And I had this conversation with a friend of mine. I have a friend that's kind of my spiritual cheerleader. He'd laugh if he knew who that, but he's kind of my cheerleader. And I said, I'm at these times where I'm not feeling nothing. It's not great and exciting like it was. Not big things are happening. Some of these things don't even make any sense to me. And he said, I went through a time just like that too. He said, I went through that, and what I realized, he said, I started asking God, why is it getting boring on me? What's up with the boring? Why isn't it fun anymore? And he said, he gave me a clear answer. He said, I'm looking for your obedience. Here's what God is looking for. Whether it's fun and exciting and thrilling or boring and mundane, he still wants you to get up that morning or whenever it is that you go and spend that time with him, right? It's kind of like a relationship. It's not all fun and exciting. There's those boring times. Those are not great times. He wants your obedience is what he's looking for. And see, what I didn't realize is I was taking that time with God and almost getting really selfish with it. See, I was looking for something that would thrill me, something that would make me want to come back for more, something great, something grand, some answered prayers, this natural high I would get from watching God work. And that's what my devotions became. They became a lot more about me than they were about God. It was about what it was going to be for me that morning. Not what he had planned for me, not what he wanted me to do, but how I was going to be excited that day. And see, when I got selfish, God got quiet. And that's kind of what happens with him is when we start tiptoeing that way, he starts tiptoeing the other way. And it's not like we intend on being selfish. Like I didn't go into it and say, okay, God, good morning, how are you? By the way, let's have something great happen today. I wasn't looking for what's in it for me. I didn't think I was intentionally. But it's just kind of the human nature of me, that you just want to see the reward or understand what's in it for you. And at first I felt really guilty about this, like, my gosh, I really took these devotions and really just messed them up and made them into something they weren't. But then I read those words. Father, why have you forsaken me? My goodness, if Jesus had to wonder for a minute, you know what? I couldn't even be part of the person Jesus was. Even with it dark and trembling and everything that was going on, he wondered for a minute. So, there's other things that people expect out of me for being a pastor. And I don't know if you guys know this, but do you know that all pastors have really good answers and opinions? Did you know that? Did you know we do? We do. We have good answers and opinions, and people are always looking for our good answers and opinions. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a game show. Like people will approach me and say, hey, Teresa, what do you think about this? And I'm wondering, am I going to pass do you want to be a pastor test? Am I going to pass it? Am I going to get the answer right? That's what I almost feel like sometimes. But then there's other times when people come to me and they're almost like they're looking for me to give them their opinion. Like she must know. She has to have this figured out, right? So she must have a good opinion that I can use. So they come to me looking for this, and I can't blame people who do that because I'm busy looking for my opinion a lot of the time too. I have spent time digging through my Bible, trying to get good opinions on Christian stuff, so I have these good opinions. And there was one circumstance in particular. It was a particularly controversial Christian issue. That's as much as I'll say about it. But it's one of those issues that come up in our world quite often. and I get asked how I feel about it. And this issue in particular kept appearing in my life. So it was appearing in my work life, it was appearing in my personal life, it was appearing all over the place. And I had never really determined what my opinion was on it. So I decided I'm going to go home and you know what? I'm going to find myself a good opinion. I'm going to have one of those opinions where I can spew out something and I have all the research and all the words and all the scripture and I can just bing, bang, boom, I can hit somebody with it as soon as they ask me. So I know what my opinion is. So I went home and I dug and I dug, and I'm a researcher, love to dig through scripture. So I'm digging and I'm looking up these verses that people had used before and used for and against, and I'm digging up all these verses, and I'm not just reading the verse, but I'm reading the whole chapter, or I'm reading the whole book, so I understand the context of where these verses came from, so I have a good understanding of it. And when I got done with that, I still didn't know. I mean, it was still kind of, I didn't have an opinion I was comfortable with. So I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll go find some commentaries. I'll go find some blogs. I'll go find some articles online. That's what I'll do. I'll see what other people are saying and see if I can figure out which one of their arguments is the best one so I can have their opinion. So I dug, and literally, I spent months on this. I spent months using my daily devotion time trying to form an opinion for myself. But I got to the point, still, I didn't like anything I could come up with. Like, I didn't totally stand behind anything. I had questions about this and questions about that. I didn't have that perfect answer. So I thought, you know what? I know what I'll do. I'll just quit. I'll just quit. That's what I did. I quit. I said, forget it then. This is ridiculous. I'm wasting my time. I'm banging my head on a wall. Forget it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to answer. I'm not going to have an opinion. That's what I'm going to do. No opinion. So if somebody asked me, and if you would have caught me in this period of time and asked me about this particular situation, I would have done one of these like, oh, yeah, yeah. I would have taken off on you because that was the way I was going to deal with it, is just not deal with it. I couldn't come up with a good opinion. So I decided I'd ignore it. That worked for a little while, probably about a month or two. And then you know what happens. This situation pops up in my life again. But this time it kind of stepped just an ounce further than it had before, just a little bit further, where it kind of hit me a little bit more personally than it had before. And this time, for whatever reason, I knew I had to answer. I knew I had to say something. But I had no opinion. So I didn't know what I was going to say. And I went back and forth and went back and forth, and I came down to a morning I was sitting at home and I was alone. Totally alone in my house. And I thought, you know what? I'm taking this up with God. I'm going to take this up with him right now. So I'm alone. So I'm talking out loud. The postman probably thought I was crazy, but I'm talking out loud. I'm like, you know what? All right, that's fine. God, you want me to have it. You want me to do something. You want me to say something. You want me to bring this person back to you. You want me to spread your word. You want me to say something this time. You're going to have to provide me with something because I don't know what to say. I have no good opinion. This is up to you. You figure it out. You tell me right now what I need to say, what I need to do. And God broke that silence. Boy, did he break it big. Very clearly. Probably one of the most clear messages I have ever heard. I heard God say, Teresa, why is it that you need an opinion? What do you need an opinion for? So you can take your opinion and voice your opinion to other people about what you think, I think? That's what you need this opinion for? And just as quickly, the words of Isaiah came into my head, and I actually had to look it up later. I didn't know what book it was coming from at the time. But have you heard, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. Just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Have you heard those verses? Those came right into my head. Who do you think you are, Teresa? You are so smart that you can figure out what I'm thinking. You can have an opinion on how I feel about a certain situation that you're walking through. Here you've spent months and months and months in your devotion time. You've spent your devotion time not spending time with me, not working on things that you have to work out. You have spent your time trying to form an opinion on something you don't even struggle with. It's not even your problem. And you want this opinion, why? So you can share it? So you can use it to judge? I gave you one thing, Teresa, one action you had to do, and I knew as clear as day what it was I was supposed to be doing. I was only given one order: to love. And I spent all my time trying to opinion instead of love. And I knew right at that moment what I needed to do with the current situation in my life. I just needed to love. I didn't need to have an opinion. See, God didn't forsake me. He didn't deny me this opinion. He just knew that I was running, chasing my tail, and there was no point in answering me. And to me, it looked like he was just being quiet. He was silent. He was distant. He took off. He didn't want to deal with what I wanted to deal with that day. That's what I thought all along. Until he finally let me in on why he couldn't answer me. Or why he didn't want to answer me. Because he didn't want me to have an opinion just for the sake of having an opinion. See, without realizing it, sometimes my selfishness will creep into these times that I'm supposed to be spending with God. And what happens is I create this silence. Now, I'm quick to blame it on God, like, I don't know, he's not talking to me, haven't heard from him in a couple weeks here. I'm always quick to blame it on God, aren't we? We're like, God's just so far away right now. I just can't hear him. I just don't know what he wants. I don't know where he went. We're so quick to do that. But is it that he's far away, or that we've distanced ourselves? See, we were talking, this is the second week of our Love and Hate series, and last week David got to talk about love, and I get hate. Why do I get hate? I don't even know why. I don't know how that, he must have picked that. But I get hate, and here's the thing, God does hate some things. I know that's an awful thing to have to think about, because we spend a lot of time talking about a loving God, and he is a loving God by absolutely all means. He is a loving God, but there are things he hates. And if you go to the book of Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs chapter 6, I believe it is. If you go to the book of Proverbs, it actually lists out some of the things God hates. It says there are 6 things, 6, that the Lord hates, but there are 7 that he cannot stand or detest. That's another way that it's put in other translations. So what are those things? First thing he says is haughty eyes. I had to look this one up. I had to look in other, because I'm like, what's hot? Do I have haughty eye? I don't know. It's proud eyes, or a proud look. A lot of other translations use proud look. So a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that kill innocent people. That makes sense, right? A heart that devises evil plans, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a witness who lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in a community. So those are the 7 things he can't stand. And why can't he stand those things? And I got looking at those, and I thought, well, I'm not guilty of any of those, am I? I mean, I'm pretty good. Like, I don't kill innocent people. I've got to be all right. But if you look at those things that I was talking about, the 2 different times that I had issues in my devotions where I felt like I wasn't hearing God anymore, the first time, what I was looking for is a little bit of self-fulfillment, right? I wanted to experience something. That's why I was doing it. That was my purpose behind it. That was my intention, my motivation, was to experience something. And then the second time, I was looking for an opinion that I could be proud of, right? One that you couldn't argue with to save your life, because I'm so proud of it and I have all of the information that goes behind it. So you can't argue with me anymore. I have all the research. See, both times I was looking to, my pride was taking over, is what it was. And what pride is an issue of self-fulfillment. We're trying to fulfill what we need in ourselves. So if you say, I had a haughty look or a proud look, but what about these other things? What about a lying tongue? What's the number one reason people lie? Anybody know why? Think about when you lie. What's the one reason you're usually lying for? Usually you want to protect yourself, right? You don't want anybody to know what you've done. It's a protection mechanism, right? That's what we lie for. We're either protecting ourselves or we're protecting someone else. See, we need to fulfill our need. We need to fulfill our need to protect ourselves. That's why we lie. What about hands that kill innocent people? And you know, this is something way more common than we think. We think, oh, we don't have to deal with that. We don't deal with hands that kill innocent people. Well, we have a war that's going on, and I bet you innocent people probably died this morning. So we have innocent people dying. And what happens there? What happens there? See, what happens is when innocent blood is shed, that moral compass that we all have as human beings, that moral compass just gets completely skewed. You have no true north anymore, right? The true north goes away. And what happens is that fulfilling your agenda, or whoever's agenda, fulfilling that agenda becomes more important than innocent people. So you're fulfilling an agenda at any cost, right? Sounds a little bit like that self-fulfillment again, doesn't it? Or what about a heart that devises evil plans? When does your heart devise evil plans? I'll tell you what mine does. I don't know if anybody else's does. My heart gets really happy in devising evil plans when I want to get revenge, right? That's when the heart gets busy, right? Because I need to fulfill my need to punish somebody for what they've done to me, right? So you get very revengeful. That's when our heart starts scheming wicked schemes, right? When it's time to fulfill your need to punish somebody else for what they've done to you. Still self-fulfilling. And by now you probably see where I'm going with all these things. All these things are very, very self-fulfilling. And what that self-fulfillment does is that it creates this gap between us and God. It creates this distance. And that is what God hates. It's not even the sins themselves that he lists out. It's not even those in particular. He knows what they create, and they create this distance. And he hates when we get busy trying to self-fulfill and create a distance between us and him. That's what he hates. Now, I want to speak real carefully about self-fulfillment because often I've heard this preached about and talked about. You know, all of this, you have to deny yourself. We've heard that, right? You have to deny yourself. You have to deny our flesh. We have to serve others. We have to put ourselves last. We know all of these, right? As Christians, we hear these all the time. And see, I know there were some points in my Christian walk where I thought, well, all right, I guess this Christianity thing is just a matter of a life punishment for me, right? That what I have to do is I have to figure out how to not care about myself enough that I can be a good Christian. I have to put all my wants and needs and desires and squish those and pack them away somewhere and put them away so that I can be a good Christian. And that's really the way I thought of it. But see, that's not what he's saying. That's not it at all. Although the message comes through that way sometimes to us, it's not what he's saying. And I actually found a really good description of this, and it was an article that I was reading. I had Dave Emmerich, he teaches the Dave Ramsey, and he brought me back some articles. He went to a conference. And I was reading this, and I want to read this to you because I found it so interesting. It's a Jewish tradition they're talking about here that's called Havdalah, and I don't know if anybody has heard of it, but it's a tradition they use, the Jewish use, and I'm not trying to convert anybody or anything here. I'm very interested in reading conflicting beliefs or different things, different cultures, different ways of doing things, because you know what I find is that although we may have a lot of things right, we did get a lot of things wrong too, right? Christians did. And although the Jewish may have a lot of things wrong, they had a lot of things right. Like I often say that I would love to be as peaceful as a Buddhist. Wouldn't you? They were always talking about peace and harmony, and that's a great place to live, in peace and harmony. So I share this with you just because I think everything has value. And this in particular I really thought had value. So now listen to this. The Havdalah service is recited over a cup of wine that runs over into the saucer beneath. The overflowing cup symbolizes the intention to produce during the week ahead, not only sufficient to fill one's own cup, but also an excess that will allow overflow to benefit others. In other words, I am obligated to first fill my cup, then continue pouring, as it were, so that I will have sufficient to give away to others, thus helping to jumpstart their own efforts. See, they use this. We're getting ready to do our offering section in just a little bit, and they use this for an offering service, and they use it that they're talking about money. But the thing that the Jewish have taught for a long time was that you are supposed to give from a full cup. So you fill your own cup and then you give. Now, we kind of have this thing about filling our own cup. It's selfish, right? We can't fill our own cup. We're Christians. We give to everybody else before we do this. But here's the thing, is that God never intended for us to do from the empty cup. See, our cups are empty, so empty. As Americans, that's the way we live life, with empty cups, do we not? We give until we have nothing left. And we leave the least for ourselves. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. So when I say things to you like, deny yourself, deny your flesh, that we have to sacrifice, when I say those things to you, what you hear is that you have to sacrifice or give up something in order to be close to God, because you're hearing from the standpoint of the empty cup. So it sounds like the sacrifice, but the thing is that it's not the sacrifice at all, because let me show you this, that if you take your time to fill your cup and you get it all the way full to the brim, when you're ready to give some, what happens is it's that stuff that pours over that you give. So you're not giving what you need. What you're giving is excess, right? It's excess. See, here's the thing. Once you are fulfilled, you no longer need to self-fulfill. God will fill this cup up for you so that everything you give is in excess. And this is not just true with money, like the Jewish are talking about. Sure, it's true with money, but there's other things, like emotions. We try to give emotionally to somebody with an empty cup, and you feel like you're hanging from a little itty-bitty thread when you do, don't you? You try to give your time or your resources from an empty cup. That's the last thing on your list. I remember when people used to ask me to come on Wednesday night to do Bible study. I thought they were crazy. I'm like, are you serious? Do you know what my week consists of? My cup's empty by Wednesday. I don't have time for that. That's what it sounds like, because we're giving from an empty cup, and I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else. We actually prayed this morning before we start service, and I said, Father, I know I'm speaking from an empty cup sometimes, but I'm asking you, as I speak this out, to help me fill my cup, because that's where we give from. God needs us to stop self-fulfilling long enough that he can start God-fulfilling. He can start filling up your cup. But he can't do that until we stop self-fulfilling. That's what we're trying to do. It no longer is about denying yourself anything. It's about sharing the wealth of what you have. That sounds better, doesn't it, than denying ourselves, but sharing the wealth of what you have. That's a much better place, a much better perspective to come from than an empty cup, isn't it? So how do we do that? How do we fill our cups? Because I always wondered, I'm like, I don't know, my cup's empty all the time. My cup's empty. And like I told you about that with the Wednesday night Bible study. I had to make room. And then that became something, and I remember when I started doing it years ago, at first it was a little bit of an obligation. I thought, oh, geez, I got to go again. Oh, I'm so tired tonight. I could use some sleep. I don't feel like it. But see, once I started filling that cup, then things started happening. There's a difference. There's a change. So the easiest thing for you to do to learn to self-fulfill is start with those things we talked about that God hates. And not the easy ones. Okay, so you're not going around killing innocent people. That's pretty easy. Like I can mark that off the list, no problem. I'm talking more about those things like I said. Like that pride that was creeping in, that I didn't really want to even recognize as pride. I didn't really even want to recognize that I was being prideful in that, but I was. Or what about the lying? You know, they're just itty-bitty little lies. They can't make that much of a difference. Or what about revenge? Revenge is a good one. We carry that one around. We hold on to that one tight. Why? Because they deserve it, right? They deserve the punishment you want to give them. Or what about just conflict? What about conflict that you've allowed to sit in your life and grow? What about those things? So start with the things that God hates, because I'm going to tell you what, once you start putting more distance between you and those things he hates, the distance between you and him gets smaller. Let me say that one more time. Once you start putting distance between yourself and those things he hates, the distance between you and him gets smaller. See, when we feel distant from God, when we make statements like, I don't know, God's just not interested, he's not around, he's not listening, he's not in my life, when we feel that distance, we are the only one that feels that distance. Because he is not distant from us. We're just distant from him. And you know, there's other things you can do. There's a lot of stuff that I recognize this. I recognize this as a struggle. I recognize it's difficult to stay on this. And that's why we do these things. Like if you look through your bulletins this week, you'll see we have like a talk it over. We have a talk it over thing. And then also, we've been doing these soaping journals. These are great. These are great. Because we realize that it's difficult to stay on task. It's difficult. And we're trying to provide you with some tools that will help you do that. See, if you had a relationship with your husband or wife or children, whatever relationship, pick your favorite relationship in your head, whoever that person may be, your favorite relationship. Now, I want you to imagine that with that favorite relationship, this is what you do. Every Sunday from 9 to 10:15, you get together. And the rest of the week, you don't. You don't call, you don't text, you don't Facebook, you don't do nothing. Just Sunday morning from 9 to 10:15, and that's it. What kind of relationship are you going to have with your favorite person now? Probably not the one you have today, right? It's probably going to be a little bit different. Maybe not terrible. I mean, you're on a consistent basis. You're talking consistently. You're catching up once a week. You've got that hour that you catch up, so probably not terrible. But is it the relationship that it could be? Is it the relationship that it's intended to be? And see, that's what happens, is that we do this once an hour thing with God, or once a week for an hour thing with God. And then we wonder why we can't hear him. Where is he? Why isn't he listening to me? Why isn't he responding to me? You haven't taken time in that relationship that week, have you? Now, before we get going here this morning, there is one other thing that I wanted to share with you, and it was funny because this kind of just came out of left field for service, but we were talking about, for those of you who know me, I suffer from, I have a disease that causes my joints to ache quite severely at times. So I have a lot of joint issues, and I went through a period of time where I was on a lot of medication trying to deal with this because they just ache. There's arthritis in them. So I had somebody tell me back months and months ago, they're like, you need to try yoga, you need to try yoga, you need to try yoga. I'm like, all right, well, I'll go try some yoga. So I did, and it helped. I was really impressed with it. It helped. So I'd go once a week or once every couple of weeks, and I did it, and my friend was asking me, well, how's it going? Is it helping? Yeah, it helps. You know, I do feel better after I go. But some time passed, and I started going a little bit less, and I knew it helped me, and I did feel better when I went. But I don't know, it just wasn't a huge priority, and before long, I just quit going. So then I was back in the same boat that I had started in, and I was back into consistent pain, and I was taking medication, and I finally woke up one day, I'm like, you know what, I got to do this. I got to get back into this. I really did feel better. It made a small difference. I got to do it. So my answer is what I do is, I don't know if you're, my husband says I'm a little stingy with my cash. I am, because if I'm going to pay for something, I'm going to get my money's worth. That's just the way it is. Like, you know, if I'm going to pay for something, I'm going to get what I paid for. So what I did is I went out and purchased a bunch of classes, and I had to use them within 30 days. Well, after I pay for it, I'm not going to let them sit there and not use them and go to waste after I've paid good money for them. So that's what I did. And then what happened is I had to start going more often because I've invested my money. I'm going to use these classes now. So I had to start going. And I felt better and better and better. And then what happened was just this past week, I had some things going on, and just in personal life and stuff, just things came up this week. And I couldn't go as many times as I typically go. Things kept coming up at the time I was supposed to be there, so I just let it go. And by the time Friday came, I remember thinking Thursday night, I'm like, oh, there's a class Friday morning. I got to get to this class Friday morning. I mean, it was just like something I had to do. I couldn't tell you how much I missed it. Like, I could feel that there was a difference in my body. I could feel that I needed to go. I mean, it was just like I was excited. Like, yes, I get to make it Friday morning finally. I was so excited. See, God's kind of like yoga. He is. He's kind of like yoga. Is that you have to discipline yourself. Make yourself obligated to do something at first. Take the time, invest the money, invest the resources, like I did with yoga. Yeah, I don't, that's God. Hey, what's up? You have to take the time and do that. Because then what happens is it's not an obligation anymore. Just like yoga isn't an obligation to me anymore. I used to dread having to take the time out of work and take the extra time after work and take in all this extra time. I used to dread it, but now it's a joy. It's an absolute joy. I love doing it. I know how much better I'm going to feel. It's a joy. And see, that's what happens with time with God, is that at first it might be an obligation, but it becomes a joy. It becomes an absolute joy. I'm looking at you because I know it's a joy for you. I like somebody who I know how joyful it is for some people, and I've watched people walk through it, and I've watched people just get excited. Even when it's boring, they're excited because it becomes a joy. So this week, I want you to figure out what is that thing that you could do